the pink is still on. We're still in Barbieland, and as we promised, there's more to talk about. Although I'm already getting the feel that this week is gonna be a little more Kenny than last week was, and possibly more somber. I've spent a lot of time now looking at what other people have been talking about around the movie and thinking again. And oh yes, I went to see it again. Which was fun on a Saturday matinee and had a somewhat different audience from when I went with my husband on a Sunday evening. So let's go back to Barbieland. Welcome to the Mosaic Arc. The chat is telling me that I'm pretty in pink. Mm. What do you think?
Beautiful.
We're just in, it's like, I think we just make this entire season about Barbie so I can wear pink the whole time?
Then we just call it the Barbie season.
The Barbie season. I think we should go the whole year on Barbie.
Yes.
I did find out that the pink that is in it. Now I've been reading conflicting reports and saying that the pink that they used to paint all the sets was pink 29219 apparently in paint terms. But the cinematographer, who's I should say this, Rodrigo Prieto, I hope that's right. I should know how to pronounce Spanish, kind of, like, but way better than my French, right?
Yeah.
That he's a cinematographer and insisted on their using something that's called Mexican pink, or it's also known as Mexican rose. This instantaneously explains to me why I loved Barbie so much. I love that pink because it's everywhere in the Southwest, and particularly in Santa Fe, which is, as maybe you all have heard, I sometimes go there. My jewelry should be the giveaway, right? So I think I just felt at home in Barbie Land. I just want to go back to the pink.
Yeah, it's the Spanish vibe of the film in the background everywhere, isn't it?
There's a lot of Spanish vibe. Okay, so I did read up on Prieto. So he's among other things, he's from LA. A lot of these they're in LA. They make movies in LA. Although all this filming they did not on location, they were in England. So you're confused. That his family had to flee from Mexico for being communist, I think. Anyway, but he's actually worked a lot with Scorsese. And we do know that despite Scorsese having a gazillion wives, I looked it up, I didn't count, but there are a gazillion of them, considers himself Catholic. So there's some mixed messages going on there in the sort of Mexican Catholicism. Right, but so the cinematographer is Mexican. The woman who plays Gloria, whose first name, confusingly enough, is America.
Nice.
America Ferrara is from Honduras, I believe. You know that I mean, they all live in LA and have this very. Therefore, as I know it, I think LA is not the Southwest. LA is LA. California is not New Mexico. They're very different regions of Hispanic settlement and history. but that feel of the Southwest and the sort of hints of what could possibly be Our Lady hiding in all of that imagery. I'm curious about that. I'd like us to go a little bit deeper this time. I mean, last time we were having a lot of fun last time, and there was, you know, a lot of good Barbie stuff in there, but there were things that we didn't touch on, both about Ken and about the sort of deep back feel of what's going on in the story. So we're going to go there this time. I wasn't sure whether I wear pink for this because it feels like we're back to normal. We're going to do the hard dive into the deep structures of everything here.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we can do that in pink though.
Can we?
Yeah, you look fat.
Oh, all right. Okay. So I went to see it again. Did you see it again?
I did. I did.
Okay.
I had to, because there's a scene in the film where Barbie and Ken are both yelling over the top of each other, and they say something different, and you can't really hear it unless you filter out one of the other's voice. So I realized that in the first viewing, I'd actually filtered Ken out to follow Barbie, because you can't listen to two different things at the same time. So in the viewing that I just did, I was deliberately ignoring Barbie and I only focused on Ken, and it kind of shifted the entire narrative. It was very, very interesting how they set that up in that little scene.
Yeah. Which scene is it?
Where she's looking for the girl who's playing with her, and she's just had her vision. You know, she's kind of doing her shining with the girl that's playing with her, and she's sat down next to the old woman. Right. Ken's just run off and discovered the patriarchy. So he runs back to Barbie and they both shout over the top of each other. She says something like, "I know who's playing with me," or, you know, I found, like, I know where to go. He yells really loudly, "Men rule the world." Yeah, men rule the world. Yeah. So
which I just said over Barbie you. So there's with Ken.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I saw it. Yeah. And I focused on Ken this time.
So, okay, so you were listening to the different track. Does it feel like a different movie now?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Which makes me like the film even more.
Oh, okay.
Because, as we said last week, it's a Rorschach test. Then I also feel like we had a completely diverging storyline if you ignored one or the other in that moment and decided who was the protagonist from that point. Because at that point, it's either Barbie who's protagonist or it's Ken.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting, because it was like, this is what little kids would do if they were playing with each other, and you've got the girl playing the doll, and then she's deciding who's going to be the lead character in the playtime. So yeah, it was cool. It's like a little secret layer there that I thought made it really fun. You get choices. Who do you want to follow? You're going to follow Barbie, you're going to follow Ken. Yeah.
This is I've seen this floating around, and it showed up in Milo's channel again today, and so I'm assuming this is kind of true. Lego did a study when they created the Lego Friends line for girls, which has pink in it, if I remember correctly. There's no pink Lego in my home. There's a lot of Lego.
There's no Mexican Lego.
There's no Mexican Lego in mine. Okay. Where they discovered that when a boy plays with the toy of a character, he tries to become the character. And when a girl does the same thing, she tries to make the character become her.
Yeah.
So if you give a boy a Batman toy, he's going to want to know everything there is to know about Batman, and he'll try to think and talk like Batman when he plays with the toy. The little girl, on the other hand, is going to make Batman go shopping, bake cookies, and go to the prom. Or be Ken. That's not to say there aren't exceptions on both sides, but that's the data that allowed Lego to finally get a foothold on the girls' market after decades of failed attempts, which is sort of interesting, right? You say, well, wait, why does, we're always trying to say that the girls are going to play with the toys in the same way as the boys, and if you give the girls trucks, then they should be just happy becoming construction workers, as in the Barbie movie. And if you give boys dolls, they'll want to go shopping, I guess. And saying that Lego couldn't get girls to buy or want their parents to buy for them the toys unless they adapted them to the kinds of play that girls actually default to.
Mm-hmm.
And he said,
that's fascinating.
if you look at how women approach things like Star Wars or remakes of animated movie, is it any wonder that so many of them want to reinvent the IP, either by feminizing it or by changing the main character to look like them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So that film, I think that's the point where they've given the option there for the audience to make that decision. Are you going to play like a girl or are you going to play like a boy?
Right.
And they yell it over the top of each other. Depending on which one you're filtering out, then you're going to go and play with your Barbie, or you're going to go and play like a boy is going to play with these toys. So I purposefully ignored Barbie in my second viewing. I was like, okay, I'm going to follow Ken. Let's see what this entire world looks like from Ken's perspective. And the film looked very different. So it was masterfully done, the way that they allowed that. Even I'm assuming it's done deliberately, but even if it wasn't, it was very, very well done. Yeah.
So when I first saw the movie, I had been at least alerted to the movie, and I mentioned some of the other. I mentioned some of the pre-responses that I had before I went. Now that I've seen it, and now that we talked about it one time, I went back and now I've watched a lot of the promotion tour stuff that the cast and the crew did, or the director, and I'm wondering whether, like, so I'm absolutely with you on the Rorschach test level of it, because I think the thing is, I think with art, it's certainly possible to see things in it that the quote, creators don't intend, obviously. And I'm, sort of having watched things like, I don't know, the Entertainment Weekly news. The videos are out there, right? I spent a lot of YouTube time this morning, and hearing the director and the cast talk about what they thought the movie was about tends to confirm the things that Paul Joseph Watson and others were saying. Ben Shapiro actually has a blistering expletive field description of what he thought was going on in it. That if you listen simply to what the cast saying they thought the movie was about, it does fit with the sort of cardboard version that Paul was worried about, that it's, this feminist movie and it's all girl power and such. And so now I feel sad because I'm not sure whether I was, wanting Gerwig to have been more layered than she actually is. I don't know. I mean, it's like we can sort of surf through what we think about the movie, but now I'm like nervous because last week I was it's like, oh, go Gerwig, you did this really clever thing, and now I'm not sure.
Yes. I wonder whether or not the cast are not trolling everybody to go and see the film by telling them that it's feminist.
I'm certain Gosling is. I'm absolutely certain Gosling is.
Yeah.
Looking at some of his interviews, he's got this. There's one of the videos that had I watched it before I went. Anyway, he's on GQ and he's talking about the kit that Ken has, like all this stuff, and he's doing this absolutely deadpan to the camera. You need two pairs of sun specs, one that Barbie might want to wear so that you can hide your eyes when you're sad because you don't want to ever bum Barbie out. And then the second pair, so that they're mirrored so that, Barbie can fix her lipstick in them or something like that. You always have to be there for your Barbie. And he's a strong enough actor that you can tell he's also winking at you without winking at you. At least I sure hope he is. I also watched La La Land this weekend so that I have some more like Gosling in my memory repertoire to draw on. And he's a great actor. I understand now certain of our team's enthusiasm for him. Hi, Mel. I hadn't seen him in anything else. And so, watching him in La La Land, he's a brilliant performer. And I can see that he's in these interviews definitely doing some trolling there, but I'm not yet convinced about the rest of the cast because they seem to be fitting the girls worry about. Well, this is what the Lego thing confuses me. So girls see themselves, they want to see themselves in the toys, and allegedly the premise of the Barbies being, if you can't see yourself in a Barbie, you're being oppressed by the patriarchy because impossible ideals to fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the old lady Barbie? That's what I want to know, right? When do I get to play? There's, you know, there's fat Barbies and, oh, there's twig Barbies, so they're thin Barbies, and there's, you know, white Barbies and the black Barbies, and there's professional Barbies, and, you know, there's the perpetual joke about Midge being pregnant, so maybe there's pregnant Barbies again. And you know, Gloria's whole speech at the end to CEO guy is, we want the dolls to be something we could actually achieve. But you know, how does that mean Batman goes shopping? I'm all twisted around in my sense of what exactly it's like. I think our version of things of it's a Rorschach test still absolutely holds, but I'm wondering, like, I don't know where to put the artistic intentionality quite now. In the actors, in the writing, in the accidents of what makes strong stories, because they did write a strong story. I think people are responding to it, although not everybody liked it. Like, I think I also watched Andrew Klavan talking about Ben Shapiro's version, and they both think it was boring and predictable. I don't think they're seeing everything, but you know.
Yeah. Well, this Lego thing that you've pulled from Milo's chat, it's interesting because does that ever really go away? Does that distinction between the way the boys and girls play ever disappear? Because if it doesn't, that would explain why the actors and the actresses are going to be promoting this film in a completely different way also. Isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, if we're not innately gender fluid in this blank slate way, where we can just be handed toys and then
let me get some toys for us to look at. Here we go. Here's the toys. Now we have our own doll. We have the dolls now. Ken doll in his jean suit, and Barbie in her LA pink costume. Okay. Now we're gonna play with these dolls. Make them do things. Yeah. I have, okay, and that's the one planned slide I have, because the rest of them are just going to go as we're talking. I figured we needed to go more with the flow for Ken, rather than me trying to control everything in female fashion, to try to have everything scripted out perfectly.
Playing like the boys today.
I'm not sure I can do it. I was very nervous about this. It's like I realized, so I watched of the variety of things that I watched. One, I watched I think it was Entertainment Weekly, or I don't know what it was. Anyway, they have things like the costume designer and the set designers talking about how much detail and perfection and precision they put into everything, including, this I thought was really fun, that the houses and the cars and things like that are all 23% too small. So the doll, you know, the human beings in them as set look like they're in doll world, because this always bothered me as you know, the houses and the cars and stuff, you can't ever fit the doll inside them. It's like, why can't they make them the right size for the doll? Anyway, they reduce so there's gorgeous detail in, obviously, the choice of the colors, the design of the sets, the costume accessory kits that they're modeling their different outfits on and such. And that's me, right? That is me in doll world. It's I do make plots and things for them, but I mainly spend time arranging, make the set right. Did you notice how much effort I put into our streaming set? Maybe.
It may have caught my attention.
We practiced a lot just so the set would be right? That's like, I really appreciate the attention to detail in the set. Sting, Our Lady.
Yes.
Cards. Yeah. You all think I don't pay attention to it. I pay. No, of course you know I pay. So anyway, let's stop letting me do this. Okay, fine. Now we've got Ken doing his good Ken, bad Ken twinning. Go back to what you were saying about if what the Lego people found was true in their research. and what you experienced in this moment of crossover in the story. It's like, are you going to consider Barbie to be the lead character? Are you going to consider Ken to be the lead character? Whose story is it? And underneath all of that, they're human beings playing the characters. So Gosling is going to play at being the Ken in a different way from Margot Robbie playing at being Barbie.
Yes. Well, it's similar to the way that people are gaming on the internet as well. So if we take that Lego example and say, okay, so boys are going to play in a boyish way, and just make that bold statement. The sexes are actually different. Then is there a moment where that switches off, or does it develop and mature into something else completely, which is part of the way that men approach work and play in their adult life as well? If girls are only able to interact with these characters by making the characters themselves, what happens then when girls are maturing and going to play as women and work as women, etc.? And that would make perfect sense to me, that this film would then be the toy that is played with differently by the male and female actors and the people that created it. So it's like this particular piece of art is a toy for everybody to play with, and they would be doing that completely differently. So that makes perfect sense to me. It's like the experience that we've had when we've been playing on the internet, and I was doing what I was doing and pretending not to be a woman. But when I was doing that, I was getting scolded by women on the internet who were telling me to play nice, not be rough. And in my mind, all I was doing was playing like the boys. So it opened up this, like that situation opened up this this conversation of okay, so men and women are going to be in this environment completely differently, obviously, right. But that makes sense to me, that they're going to be in every environment differently, and including the perception of the movie that they're in. It's going to look different. So yeah, I decided to follow the Ken track, do some more gender bending, and abandon the Barbie headspace and follow Ken throughout the film, so that I could watch what it was like in Kendom. And it was really, really interesting, because the movie does look very different. And I think that's kind of why that's why I would say I can see the failure in the film now, because looking at it from the feminine, looking at it from the Barbie, it was a win, because everything we said last week was a Barbie.
So I have, yeah. I mean, there's some, okay, what do we still think it's a win from the Barbie side?
No, I don't.
Okay, can we think about that just a little bit?
Not a full one. It got so close. Yeah. It almost kissed the glory it was chasing. It's like playing Kiss Chasey as kids, and you're like, oh, it's so close. And again, this happens to Ken, right? Just almost there and nothing. So that was the film. It was almost there.
There was, yes, and I'd say, I mean, the first time through, you can be delighted and surprised that they say certain things at all. And then the second time through, recognize how they could have said more. But I'm even wondering about the thing that we said that worked best last week, that we said last week that worked best, was when Gloria's saying, maybe the dolls could just be moms, and that, of course, being enormous for the generation that grew up being told, I mean, this is what I find ironic about the whole.
It's massive for millennials. It's a massive deal for millennials.
And that I do believe that. I hope that's true. I mean, from my perspective, it's like, wow, like, how could, as I've said many times, a professional woman in my lineage going back generations. So the sort of problem of career versus motherhood is not the same. It's not configured the same for me as it is for your generation. But I've been constantly bothered by the whole claim of, well, I mean, this is what the irony of the show is. We need to show women being astronauts and presidents and stuff because otherwise women will be depressed. Oh, but no, if you show them being astronauts and presidents and beautiful and fashionable and mermaids and all of these things, they'll be depressed because they can't be mermaids. And I'm like, okay, so
it's going to be depressed.
Maybe you're just going to be depressed, ladies. It's like, who's, and always, always the problem of who's doing this to you, which is in fact something we didn't talk about so much last week, but that I did want to bring up this week. It's like, there is no patriarchy except the patriarchy of Mattel that's giving you these models that you now feel oppressed by. And it's like, but wait, who gave you those models? Oh, wait, Ruth Handler, because she was in charge of the company. And so the fundamental problem of feminism being, and this is it's scripted into the movie as when Ruth says to Barbie, mothers stand still so their daughters can look back and see how far they've gone. It's like, yeah, so what you're basically telling us, this is a movie fundamentally about mothers and daughters. We do get that now. And then there some other layers in it of mothers and daughters are, one of the reviewers I watched today pointed out that Weird Barbie, the girl who's playing with Weird Barbie is in fact Gloria when she's a girl. So it's like you can say Gloria is the mother of both Weird Barbie and of the designer Barbie that she wants to be making because she wants to be a designer for Mattel. So Gloria is like the mother of everybody in the story in an interesting way. Ruth is mother of the actual Barbie, Barbara Handler, and therefore the mother of the doll and in some other ways. And the entire thing is therefore this generational problem of the mothers and daughters and the daughters hating what the mothers are. And you're like, wait, no, okay, this has nothing to do with patriarchy. Blaming your feeling confused on patriarchy, which we need to get to, right? It's like what Ken has actually found, is the fundamental crisis of feminism, which is it's the women doing it to each other or themselves. Ladies, well, in the comments, please.
I mean, for us, it's difficult to say there's no patriarchy because, of course, we have this word used in a religious sense. So I think this is where it, and this is me spurging and it bugging me. But whenever that word is used, it's used in the context of feminists who are saying they need to smash the patriarchy. Right. Not understanding what it actually is. Okay, so the film is the relationship dynamics of women.
Right.
And I think where I saw the character arc of Ken is they'd done something to him which was essentially a kind of girls playing with Lego thing. That Ken was boxed by the end of the film. He was put in a box.
My dog is doing this. Blame the dog.
He's agreeing.
Yes, my boy dog. So Gosling actually says that in the GQ skit, right? He's saying, and here's Ken in a box, which is where they want to put me. Gosling got it. Definitely. Yeah.
He gets it. Yeah, he gets it. The interesting thing about that Ken character is that he never becomes sentient of the power dynamics of the matriarchy that the Kens are living in. They see it as a he sees it as the oppression of all women, of the men around them, because in Barbieland the women are in charge of everything. Because their experiences are split. Okay, here's the other thing where there was a split in the story. Barbie and Ken are at the high school looking for the girl who's playing with Barbie. Ryan Gosling's Ken has just raided the library for all of these books on masculine things, you know, horse riding and trucks. So he's got his big stack of books. Mattel come and get Barbie, and they pull her into black cars with tinted windows. So she's essentially being kidnapped. He lets her go. I find this really interesting that everybody said the Ken character in this movie is a hero because he goes back to Barbieland to emancipate the Kens and to bring them patriarchy and everything. Well, my second watch of this film, that really stood out to me. He was willing to stow away with her with his rollerblades. But she got kidnapped by Mattel and he didn't follow her. He left and he went back to Barbieland.
Right.
So there's a kind of insight here into what they were actually saying about Ken's this idea of patriarchy, and also men when they're attempting to set up what they think is a patriarchal situation without any of the responsibility of being patriarchs. And this was like something that stood out. This particular scene, he said to the woman, "Oh, she'll be fine," and then he said, "I'm going back to Barbieland to tell the Kens about what I've discovered." Right. So the whole movie then becomes a joke at the expense of men who are thinking that they're going to achieve masculinity independent of their stewardship of the Barbies. And it becomes this really kind of over the top mockery of what male leadership is, because when they set up the Kendom, it becomes slavery for the women. So, is this making sense?
Yes.
He still hasn't achieved what he actually wanted, which was patriarchy. They've kind of undermined the whole thing by putting him back in there without Barbie. He never gets it.
Well, so what I ended up thinking is both feminism and patriarchy are fantasies. And that's, I mean, the thing is, I don't think Gerwig means to show that. And the problem with, okay, so back up to the entire existence of Barbieland, the way it's created in the story in the movie, although it's not true in real life that it was made by men. It was made by Ruth Handler and her, seeing her daughter play with paper dolls and finding this men's novelty item and then turning it into a girl's doll. And then Ruth Handler, she's at the head of all of these design decisions throughout the 60s when they're creating the sort of premise of the Barbie. But in the movie itself, I'm too distracted now by wondering what my dog was talking about. In the movie itself, Mattel is run by men, right? So that Ken finds out when he goes to the real world, which is its own kind of fantasy world, that the world is ruled by men and Mattel is run by men, which directly means the men who run Mattel have been taking care of the Barbies. I mean, it's like there's the sort of, Ken goes back and he gets to be a toy version of what women claim men are like when they're being men, right? It's like the frat boy party and such. And of course, people are criticizing Clavin and companies, like they're all, Clavin was saying, Ken goes back and he plays, he's dressed, or sorry, I've mixed up all the people that I've listened to today. He's peacocking, right? He's got his bad guy headband, and he's got his great mink coat, and he's taken over Barbie's house and filled it up with horse stuff, which we were fine with, and so it's all a fantasy version of what, quote, ruling the world looks like. But the reality of it is that Mattel, who's all men, does rule Barbieland because they're the one making all the marketing decisions.
Yes.
So it's like I don't know how clever Gerwig actually is. She set it up to undermine that the Barbies have to undermine the Ken patriarchy in order to restore things back to the way they were under Mattel's patriarchy. The Barbies are never outside of patriarchy in the cartoon version of sexual relations that the story sets up.
So their entire setup as the rulers of Barbieland is a decision that's made by the male board of Mattel.
Right. Which we're supposed to, as viewers, say, oh, isn't this terrible? These men are making all the decisions for the company. And it's like, yes, and the decisions they made was to create Barbieland, where you have President Barbie. So the men made it.
Yes.
Right? It's like the men made Barbieland in the version of the story. And they have Ruth Handler there in the kitchen pretending to, sort of have the spirit over the company for them. But as the story's written, the men are actually in charge of making sure the women get to live in their pink world. So ironically, they've done exactly what men in the real, quote, patriarchy are supposed to do, which is give the women homes. Look, there's their dream houses. And some, boys to play with. It's like I think, insofar as the irony of the movie is in multiple layers, the deeper irony of the movie is that the men have actually set it all up so the women can have their party.
So why is Ken not happy with this?
Well, it's like at some point I'm not sure where we're landing in deciding who's doing what with this story, right? And I could say, we could just come up with saying Gerwig's fundamentally confused, and this will be sorry. I was like, we're undoing what we did last week, saying, oh, she's a genius. No, she's fundamentally mixed up. In the same way that women have been in all of this careerism, and saying, we want to consider it. It's like, I mentioned the Mexican pink of the cinematographer. Clearly, Gerwig is supported by lots of men to be able to make this movie, including someone who is apparently her co-writer and partner, but not her husband. Right? Noah, what's his name? Baumbach, right? That she is, I think that one of the clever, I did write this down because I wanted to make sure I remembered who he was, except I can't find it in my notes. Here we go. There's a video by the New Rock Stars with Eric Voss breaking down things. And he goes through very nicely in certain details. And there's one really great insight that I want to share with you that he had. But one of the things he's noticing in the script, which Gerwig actually wrote, and the actors talk a lot about how she insisted they say exactly what she wrote. So no ad-libbing. That what Barbie says at the end is she wants to be the one who makes, I am ad-libbing this because I don't remember exact words, but she wants to be the one who makes the meaning rather than the one who is made meaning with. And Voss points out, well, this is Gerwig herself, because she has been an actress in various other productions, including in one thing that people keep comparing the look of all of this to is Wes Anderson. And Gerwig was actually one of the characters in Isle of Dogs, which I have seen. It's an odd movie. I think I fell asleep because it was so sleepy and mystical and kind of slow and stuff like that. But so she's Gerwig herself's got a lot of backing in all of this, and she's got this great cinematographer helping her who's worked with Scorsese and stuff. But she wants to be the one making the meaning. So I think Hollywood mainly makes movies about itself always, which is what La La Land is, which is about, we want to be the artists who give meaning and story. And, the weepy exposition moment in that one is when the actress is ad-libbing to the effect of why art matters. Okay, good. I get it, right? I want to do that for academia sometimes. But insofar as our earlier premise about girls playing with the toys, Gerwig made everybody in that cast her.
including the boys.
Okay, so now we just have to go deep and depressing. I did, the thing is, I tried watching it the same way I did the first time because I just wanted to enjoy Ken's story, and there are moments that she gives Ken which are incredibly strong and poignant from watching in the with sympathy with the men from my perspective, right? That Ken is, and Gosling has sort of skitted this in his interviews about the production. Ken is devoted to Barbie. He's happy only when she notices him. He's so attentive to his Barbie, right? And that's the way Gosling describes the character, right? Ken and his Barbie, he needs to be attentive to her. So, you know, she likes rollerblading, so he has to have his rollerblades so that when she goes to California, he can, you know, support her. So, I mean, you're saying that he watches her get picked up by Mattel and doesn't do anything, but until that point, he has been doing everything for her. Right? You know, it's he's trying to match her desires and be the perfect boyfriend, right? And cartoonishly, the one that indeed women always seem to project that they want, right? It's like, oh, I want, you know, if you, I obviously haven't been dating in a very long time. I've been married for decades, guys. I've been married for longer than a lot of you have been alive. So yes, I'm old enough to be your mom. But the way women describe how they want the perfect man, he is that, right? He's perfectly attentive to her. He has his rollerblades because she likes going rollerblading, and you know, he's going to have his double sunglasses so he can take care of her and be ready to, you know, assist and be chivalrous to her. I've lost the thread. Anyway, so when he goes back and he's going to have, you know, the patriarchy and men rule the world, and even then he's still looking for her approval. Always, right? That's why Gosling's Ken is so poignant, because even when he's taken over their house and she's like trying to throw him out, and he's like, I always hoped that would be our house. Which I can weep up about that, right? You know, that he was wanting to be with her in a realistic, it seemed to me, in a realistic relationship, and she's behaving like stereotypical women do, like in Sex and the City, right? My home, my apartment, my space, my life. There's no room for you, man, except for as my accessory.
Yeah, well, I mean, the dynamic of this is interesting because they're in the fantasy land of the people that are playing with them, so it's not them.
Right.
So this is the millennial dynamic. Because Gloria is playing with Barbie, so Gloria is ignoring Ken. This is Gloria.
Who made Weird Barbie.
Yeah.
Who's on screen right now. There we go. Now we have Alan. But we had Weird Barbie for a second there. Yeah, Gloria's making all of this. This is Gloria. No, and this is, I think Andrew Clavin points this out to a certain extent. It's like, this is entirely Gloria's fantasy world. She wants to be, you know, higher up in Mattel. She wants to have, well, and so this is I find the peculiar horror of all of this. The man who plays her husband in the movie is America Ferrera's husband. So I rather think he might speak Spanish better than he's pretending to in the movie. But and this is, there's I did have some thoughts about dad jokes, which is what he turns into, right? He's the Anglo husband of the, you know, feisty Latina in the movie, and he is so in real life as well, and he's a joke in the movie. Gloria's husband in the movie is an utter joke because he can't speak Spanish and the daughter has to correct him, and he's dumb and he uses, you know, political slogans instead of, that's cultural appropriation, Dad. I mean, it's like, at that point, yeah, you are mad. And this does feel stereotypically feminist, even as they're taking her to the gynecologist.
Yes. Well, it depends. Again, it depends on whether or not you're approaching it as the Barbie track or the Ken track. The Barbie track is her working out her own issues with the matriarchy. that she's in. But on the Ken track, she can't work it out. And this is an interesting thing because it's the Lego problem. Women can't work out the Ken track. So when she's playing with Ken, when Ken is in this situation that she's crafted, he's doing everything perfectly because that's her ideal, sure. But she can't actually work out a patriarchy, which is why everything looks so stereotyped. The boys get frat housey. She can't go into the depth of him having his own entry into his manhood. He gets stuck in Barbieland with his Kenough, which I think is an interesting thing, and it's why it annoyed me. I still don't feel sorry for Ken in the sense that I don't want to feel sorry for people that are boxed. I like to say, okay, you've been boxed, yes. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
But it can seem very cold, but it's not. It's because I think what has happened is the Gloria character that's been playing with Barbie and Ken has allowed Barbie to go off and have her self-realization experience. And then Ken is left behind with his t-shirt saying, I am Kenough, because this is a kind of millennial trend of how the sexes are interacting with each other. Millennial women are mothering their own husbands, and she responds to her husband like he's a child, like he's her child, instead of that he's a husband. Right. So this is why I found the Kendom so unsatisfying, and why I think there's a trick in it, in that it's empathizing with the frustration of young men that can't find their their own, like, you know, their own feeling of being respected. But ultimately what it's done is it's proposed Ken as the ideal because he has an emotional catharsis and then shares a mink coat and suddenly he's Kenough. There is no happy ending for Ken. That's not a happy ending for Ken. He stays in childhood in that outcome. Yeah, and that's why it felt really unsatisfying that the women had set this entire story up with them both being separated. And it was sad because Ken never gets what he wanted the whole time. He says he wanted the house with Barbie, but he doesn't realize it in the real world. She just leaves him there.
Right.
Mm.
But she leaves it. She leaves him as a toy, and she goes and becomes a human. So he's still a boy toy.
Yeah, he is. He's a boy toy. But it also makes sense to me because in the kind of way that they work out the Ken character, you know, in the beginning, he's just beach, right? What do you do? Oh, I beach. He tries to go into the surf and he embarrasses himself and he's like, okay, you know, it's really dangerous, whatever. But the running joke is the Kens are all stuck in this static role. Again, going into the Lego mindset of how girls and boys are playing with their toys and whatever. It's like all of these Kens have very static roles. They've been placed in their roles. But Ken never gets to he never actually learns how to swim. Like when he's running around in the real world, you know, asking for a clicky pen because he wants to do an appendectomy and become a surgeon or whatever, and he goes to the beach and he asks if he can be a lifesaver and everything, and he's getting rejected. He goes, okay, I can bring all of this back to Barbieland. This is where I thought the interesting thing was for men, in that it is very sad what happens. Barbie leaves him, whatever, but it's an insight into female psychology. Ken feels disrespected in Barbieland, and he feels respected in the real world because people are asking him the time, you know. So he ends up with 3 watches because he's like, if I have the watch, women will ask me the time,
Oh
and
well, in the
it's gonna make me
GQ
feel
thing,
respected.
he has 3 watches. One for the like being like looking busy and having important stuff, but he's of course Ken, so he doesn't.
Yeah,
One pink, so it's for
yeah.
Barbie, and one that has shows the phases of the moon, so he knows when to go surfing. That's a little inside joke for us
So
Draco
cute.
Alchemicus writers, because we're worried
Mm-hmm.
about the planets.
We love our
Yeah.
moon phases. But
He's not wrong about
he never
watches, though. I mean,
actually,
watches are an intense
yeah.
symbol of mechanistic efficiency and timekeeping and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like watch is a very good symbol to have chosen for. Do you have the time? Do you know the
Yes.
structure of activities? Can you live with meaning?
Mm-hmm.
Or industrial? It depends on whether you're happy or depressed about that, I thought. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, he never actually learns to do any of the things that he's seen in the real
Right.
world. They leave him, they relegate him to the dollhouse. He doesn't bring Kens with him to the real world to learn how to do anything that he was impressed by. So as sad as it is, because it's a sad ending for Ken, he gets boxed as a toy boy. And basically, what I think the trick here is, this is where it's like very, very subtle for millennials, is that the empathy for Ken in that situation is like a temptation for millennial women to mother the Kens in that moment. You're going to do what Gloria does with her husband and say, oh, he'll be fine, or like he's insignificant, or, whatever. He's just silly and he can't speak Spanish. Her daughter disrespects her father because she says it's cultural appropriation. And that triggered me because I thought, you married him. It's basically, he should be able to say whatever you say.
Well, America really did marry him,
like
and it's interesting that she's okay. I mean, obviously she's okay with him being in that role because he's in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he's humiliated.
But are they trying to show what happens though? Because if they're both aware of this dynamic, it would be a very interesting thing to be able to show to people with someone. If you have a husband who you really respect, you go, okay, how are we going to demonstrate what we're seeing here with all of these other couples we're surrounded by? If you're used to an environment where you've got these empowered feminist women and the way that they're interacting with their husbands. So how do we show this? All right, But no, I think the temptation was to lump a maternal pity on Ken at the end of that movie. It was the most dissatisfying part of that whole story arc for Ken, because he gets put back in the box. He gets told that he's Kenough. He has an emotional catharsis, and then nothing.
Yeah.
You're enough. It's a lie. He wasn't. He was not.
Well, you're right, because he didn't have any skills. I mean, I did think
he had no skills.
They showed that well.
None.
The patriarch in the real world means having skills.
That's why he's so impressed by it. That's why he has this wonderful joy, because suddenly he's seeing men that can do things. Oh my God, they can build. Men ride horses. Men run businesses. Men tell women to shut up. Women are asking us the time. We know what's going on. I can be a doctor. All this incredible surge of like masculine potential and it gets squished because he doesn't go back into the real world to realize it. He cries and puts on a t-shirt and says, I'm Kenough, and then waves and saying, thank you, Barbie. He gets mothered back into a box of being a little boy. He's not respectable. So this is why Barbie says, I'm not in love with Ken.
Other than it actually being her brother and nobody.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I know. Like, I mean, it's kind of good. Like with that knowledge, you gotta go.
I got more story on Ken Handler after it's all on Wikipedia, guys.
No, but that was my perception. Gloria put him in a box. Silly little boy. You can have your cry. Oh, it's okay. You're all good. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do the serious stuff. horrible for Ken.
Well, the other thing that I thought was horrible in that scene where he's crying and saying that, I lost interest in the patriarchy when it wasn't about horses. Okay. I mean, that is something like a 10-year-old might say. I want to, and I've also had some more conversations about this, and one of the young men I talked to about it, saying, the potential for an interesting story here was showing the way in which children are playing with dolls that are meant to help them. These are not educational toys. They're dolls. And people are always, turning them into, like training, like the baby dolls are training you to be a mom. No, puppies don't even train you to be a mom. We had some puppies in the video in the stills recently. Oh, here we've got to the episode.
Oh, the puppies.
Kid, that one I'll tell you about. That was one of these interesting like real life videos with Gosling and Robbie. So the young man I was talking to was saying it's interesting that they don't show the way in which these are children playing with the toys and misunderstand, like, what is it like for children trying to play at being adult, right? Which is in fact what, as you're saying, it's like Gloria's playing with the dolls, but in fact it's still Gloria's the young girl playing with the dolls, wishing she was still a young girl or that she had a connection with her own daughter. So she's herself not grown up. That, I mean, Ken in his power ballad and his saying, I live for you. Interesting. I'm hearing that in the way they're bad relations between sex on all sides in real life. And one is men are that romantic and women are that cruel. Flat out. Yes. We have another quotation. Yes. So we had the Lego quotation. Here we now have a 19th century straight up Victorian perception of women and men, which Fox posted, and there's a trick in this. So here's the speaker saying from the 19th century. In one sense, I do believe I am like a man, as Parth says, but how? In having sympathy. Women crave for being loved, not for loving. They scream out at you for sympathy all day long. They are incapable of giving any in return, for they cannot state a fact accurately to another, nor can that other woman attend to it accurately enough for it to become information. Now is not all this the result of want of sympathy? I am sick with indignation at what wives and mothers will do of the most shocking selfishness, and people call it all maternal or conjugal affection, and think it pretty to say so. No, let each person tell the truth from their own experience. They really don't have sympathy. The writer means women. They really don't have sympathy or the ability to empathize because they are always judging everyone and everything as a product on a social value scale that relates to their own egos and bounces off of themselves. There is no capability for genuine feeling. This is what I've experienced with women. There is no capability for genuine feeling for other humans, or really in general, except when those feelings are for themselves and the other people are just proxies to bounce ideas off of. This is like when we're trying to say, do you realize what Simone de Beauvoir said about women and feminism? Her invention of feminism, when she's desperate for... Clavin brought up de Beauvoir and saying, like, Simone de Beauvoir, as we've established, wrote herself, wrote an 800-page book to try to console herself that Sartre wouldn't marry her. Opposite world, we have women don't really have sympathy or the ability to empathize because they are always judging everyone and everything as a product on a social value scale that relates to their own egos and bounces off of themselves. There's no capability for genuine feeling. Class, who do you think said that? It's a the ironies. Did you see this post?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You want to tell them who said it?
It's Florence.
Oh my goodness! The nurse, the one famous for nursing the young men in the Crimean War, taking care of, saying, Florence Nightingale, blunt as she is in this, saying women aren't capable of love. Whoa. I think I read this, but I can't remember, did I read this before or after we went to see the movie the first time? there is, I think there's some truth in what she's saying. Certainly the way in which women behave about feminism and patriarchy, right? They want to smash the patriarchy and take this status that they think simply exists to be taken. And what Nightingale says is, this social value scale that relates to their own egos and bounces off of themselves. They're always looking, and I'm certain I have to be guilty of this, being woman, looking for the way in which whatever they're doing is about their own. And in Barbie, it's that, mirror isn't a mirror, right? It's this, how are you able to see yourself? The whole point about the dolls and being like, whether they're oppressive or empowering to women, is saying women are always judging like this in relation to each other, it's like, and poor Ken is sitting there saying, I'm going to read a book about horses and look interesting. I am going to serve you and try to anticipate all of your wants and all of your, difficulties and needs. And I want to have a house and a home with you. I mean, interesting, they don't have Ken saying, and I hoped we'd have a family together. But, I thought the house would be ours. How does it feel when you're not valued? And all of the women, I mean, I sort of eavesdrop on the women in the theater when I saw it on Saturday. Women will constantly say, oh, they're finally hearing us. And you're going, are you listening to them at all?
Okay, you activated too many thoughts at the same time. It was Barbie's house. I've got cultural prejudices against the idea of men coming into a woman's house. I think it's a bad idea, but that's a different stream, I think. Because I saw that as him wanting to come into an established female-dominated environment instead of saying, I'm going to establish my Kendom and I'm going to invite you into it. So again, this is cultural prejudice, but I didn't see that as romantic at all. I just thought, oh my God, it's a trap run.
For him.
Not for Barbie, for him. Yeah, this is a trap for you. Like, you're clinging on to mummy.
Okay. Interesting.
Stop clinging on to mummy. You should be you should be getting your shit together and establishing a world that you can invite these Barbies into yourselves. This is I think the key thing for me with the Kendom is that they're all satellites of women. These are boys. They haven't had a moment, you know why I'm saying this, that they haven't had a moment where they're emancipated from the hearth of the home to go out and to know themselves. It was probably the only thing that Barbie said, which I think was, kind of kind in this situation, when she said, you need to know who you are without me. That's true. It's absolutely true. Because to be patriarchy, which is to be father, men have to know who they are in order to be able to lead their family, in order to be able to raise their children. So I was like, he's asking her, I thought this was going to be our house. Why? It's like moving into a sorority and saying, oh, I always thought that I would be able to join the sorority. No, dude, you got to go out and do your own thing first. So there's that point. The second thing is, nurses are not like normal women. So in the old days, pre-profession, I mean, Florence Nightingale,
she's the most professional woman there was in the, I mean, she creates that as she
created that as a profession. But prior to her creating that as a profession, it was she kind of took on a kind of an asceticism, really. I mean, she couldn't have a family life and do what she was doing in a normal way. So there's a perception difference there. I don't think she's wrong, though, entirely, in the sense of women always looking for how did she describe it? The social status factoring into the decisions.
Well, you may have heard a little bitterness in my reading of it. I mean, the thing is, I think the fundamental lie of feminism is what they're they're performing out in the Barbie world, is that, it's like when the president says, everybody turn to the Barbie next to you and say how wonderful you are. That's the thing that's hardest for women. It's incredibly hard.
Oh yeah, no, the women don't
It's
do that.
incredibly
No.
hard for women not to sort themselves into pecking orders. The sisterhood is
Yeah.
you know, be nice if any how do they say about Western civilization? Be nice if it were actually tried. It's very, very hard because we are in
Yeah.
competition with each other. And you know, I think I've done some blog posts, and it's like yesterday was the Feast of the Assumption, and I've thought about Mary a lot as why women need Mary. It's because without, like, you know, the mother of God as your
Yeah.
focus, it's incredibly difficult for women not to end up in bitchiness about each other. And I know it's like if you're honest with yourself, you have been there at some point, either being the,
Hmm.
not you personally, but women, ladies, you know,
Oh, but I
that
have.
and the thing is, I mean, I'll watch I know I have to watch myself for what kinds of things I'm bitchy about, because that's clearly the thing where I'm being my Barbie self. It's like, well, that's my, I get to be that Barbie, right? And you're not going to compete with my Barbie. If I'm going to be Professor Barbie, you better not be over here, name for female dog, or, you know, I'm going to cut you, right? And the sort of massive sort of fiction of the Barbie world is they each get to have their own distinct Barbie-ness that they're never going to feel competitive over. That is not actually what happens.
No,
I mean,
no.
it's better when it does, when women can have clear roles, and then we do feel happier.
Mm.
But you're gonna bump up against each other, and we need better practice at figuring that out rather than just saying, "Oh yes, if it were only women, we'd all get along and there'd be no wars." No, actually, in the Barbie movie, they start the war between the men, so I thought that was actually accurate.
Yes, yes.
That was another. Okay, so go back to being feeling sorry for the men. I
Okay,
mean, he
so
says, "I'm gonna
no.
sing, I'm gonna play guitar at you," and then you end up with the whole of the campfire, and they're all singing it, and the women trigger all of them by making them jealous. Now, that seemed to me
Yes.
to be pretty low on the Barbies' part, but maybe you have a different reading of that as what the. Do we
I
feel
just
sorry for
have
the
I
Kens or
just
not in that
No, I
situation?
just have a completely different like understanding of this because I was looking at little boys that were playing at being men and thinking, okay, so like this is fine because as long as I have a beer like a fridge full of beers, I'm a man. That it, the irony of this is that Ken did not assume the ultimate responsibility over Barbie. He left her to go into the black van. I couldn't get over it.
We were
You're
liking Ken last week. We don't like.
no,
We like or dislike him? We still like Gosling, right? Because
I
we
love
hope.
no, I love Ken. I love Ken, but
Okay, you love Ken.
I love Ken. But I
I
think
still
this
love
is
Barbie too. I mean, I think it's like Barbie is actually trying to be the leader, beautiful woman that makes all the other women around her happy, which I do credit.
yes.
Yes,
Yes.
she is trying to be Virgin Mary Barbie, ironically.
Um my train of thought went. Where am I? Okay.
So where are we with the
So
men? The thing is, you've said this, and I realized that you were absolutely right about this. Ken never assumes any responsibility for
he
anything, and
never
there was
assumes
a particular way that
responsibility.
you said when we were talking about it, that the thing that he never actually does, just
Oh yeah, I've said it. How many times have I said it since we saw this film first? Over and over and over. He never
simple.
actually asks Barbie out. He never once walks up to her and says, "Hey, you stupid bimbo, I like you. Can I take you to the beach to sing to you?" And this is a really interesting dynamic, right? Where they're all on the beach and they're all having their romantic dates. They're all together.
Right,
He never once takes Barbie away from girls' night and says, "No, I want time with you. Don't go there."
right.
He's constantly orbiting her instead of inviting her to orbit him. And this is the massive failure of the Kendom. The bitterness over the lack of romantic attention, the envy of the fact that the women are all in positions of power and authority and dominance over the Kens, the failure for them all to realize exactly why Barbie wasn't in love with him. This is the dynamic I was seeing in the film. It's the millennial problem. It's that the Kendom, have not actually realized that in order to woo her, They need to be making the moves. Ken doesn't ask her out. He doesn't tell her, I want us to have our own house one day. There's no, don't have night with the girls tomorrow. I'm going to come and pick you up. It's girls' night every night. And he just walks away passively. So the entire movie has set everybody up to have this weird cathartic kind of empathy and false, what I would call a false sympathy for Ken when he has his catharsis and he has his breakdown, and say, oh, you're Kenough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I'm thinking about if I had a son and I was there watching this film with him and we left the cinema and I was talking about the movie with him, I would say this to him. They have set all these boys up for failure.
Right.
The box is free empathy from mummy. You're only going to get that from your mama. Everyone else is going to expect you to know how to swim. You got to know how to do things that are more than beach, you know? But they haven't done this. They haven't actually said this. And I think this is because there's a nervousness around it in that California culture, where once we open that box, then we have to have some conversations about confidence and capacity, and then it's back in Legoland. Oh no.
It's ironic that Will Ferrell was in Legoland too, as the dad who controls everything.
Yeah.
You know, definitely.
But you know what I mean?
Yes. No, it's like, realize there's
you
no
can't
men
just
in the
walk
movie.
up and want a clicky pen. There's no men. There are no men in this film.
There's no men in this movie at all, which is to say why then the men like Clavin and maybe Shapiro were reacting to it in the way that they were, just saying this is, again, it's the girls playing with the dolls throughout.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and because women cannot have that masculine development.
Right.
They can't empathize with it. She doesn't know what it means for Ken to realize the light bulbs go off and go, oh, okay, now what do I do? The film cuts at Ken just waving with Kenough. Mm-hmm. Because that's what a woman would want. A woman would want to be told, you're enough.
Well, this being the irony throughout all of it is, and this, you know, saying, this is why I say that the feminism patriarchy thing is fundamentally fallacious. That based on my observation of men and seeming the things that do seem to make them happy when they're doing them, they like being skilled at stuff. We've talked about that before, that they like actually, and they will obsessively practice stuff. I see them in the park, you know, where the dog and I go, and there's a little skateboard set up with jumps and things like that. It's mainly guys.
Yeah.
And they will
over and over.
I'm dying of boredom. And the thing is, women will practice, we will practice certain things, but not with that. And obviously the true hierarchy that men practice being in is competitive, right? It has to be competitive because they're pushing each other. There is also in the park, you know, baseball camp and stuff like these are all guys. They're guys doing all of this skilled training, and that's in my woman's observation of men over the course of my life, the thing that they seem to truly enjoy. Women want to be reassured that they're good enough to be doing it at all, and therefore the joke, and when Ken and Barbie first get arrested, and I saw a funny meme about it. She, you know, girls when they get 99 out of 100 on a test and she's all depressed, and you know, boys when they barely pass. You know, well, I've known men that are not like that, right? But that they're actually quite upset too about the 99 out of 100. But the you know, women, and I acknowledge this of myself, constantly worrying about, am I okay? And you know, the horrible irony, as Gloria does end up saying in that long-winded speech she gives, is it's never enough. Right, but it's not the men doing that to you. It's not the patriarchy that you're having to snap out of. It's your own frustrations as a woman, ironically not being satisfied with the skills that you do have because somehow they're never in fact enough.
Well, no, but that's navigating female relationships.
So I think there was sort of the depth in this is possibly we're not Vox has said this a lot. Like, women aren't good at being alone. That's why we end up with the jokes about the cat ladies. And that no matter how, we can be very, very skilled at things, but we don't. What is it? What's the not enough? And you're right. Giving Ken that sweatshirt and saying he's enough.
He was feminized.
Feminizing him.
Yeah, they just cut it. They clipped him. Yeah. He went from being a stallion to a gelding. They cut, because that's what they do. I was having a chat with one of our friends in the DCR team not long ago, talking about horses and what they do with horses to make them easier to train and to manage. And stallions are not clipped at all.
We're talking about geldings, are we?
Geldings, yeah. Well, they have to have some of their organs removed, and then they're easier to break in, and they're easier to ride and train or whatever. And then there's this other thing, which is, what is it? Proud cut, that's it. And the proud cuts are like half stallion, half gelding or whatever. But, there's this kind of category of horse. Ken he just got cut. He got cut. He got told he was Kenough and he could cry and it was great. No. And it was a failure, not of Ken, but it was a failure of the girls playing with the dolls to understand that this is actually damaging the boys, to be told this is going to make them fine. He was feminized. He wasn't brought out into the real world to learn how to do any of the things that were making him so excited in the first place. And I think that's probably because women don't understand that that's part of men being joyful is them obsessively doing the same thing 500, 600 times in a row. Women think it's weird.
Well, in fact, the men. I mean, it's funny in the movie having the Kens have their beach fight, right?
Yes.
That, in my observation, is what boys default to at birthday parties. Stack of plastic swords and everybody's happy. There's two teams and everybody's running around fighting each other.
Yeah.
Just default.
Yeah, they want to fight. Yeah. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a genuine aggression. They just want to fight.
Ironically, it's called sports. And so the problem is like women wanting to be in all I did a blog post about this some time ago called Boys with Tits. And it's not what you think it's about. It's about Title IX. It's about Title IX and the sports that women were most that were the most funded women's sports under Title IX were all men's games. Right, they're basketball and soccer and I don't know I can't remember what they track and field and such. And what Title IX in fact enabled women to try to do was become men. It's like you're going to play men's sports, and the more women's sports we have, the more masculine. Well, one, we're not as physically skilled in certain ways. I mean, there are women's sports that they're really, really good at, that they can do different things that men don't. Although, like gymnastics, you don't get to do that once you're like more than 16 or 17, unless
or 13 in Russia and
unless you arrest your development in chemical ways. That women have been being told they need to be men to be valuable for generations now. And the men are being told, you can't be men, or we mommy you, punish you. We're so mixed up.
Yeah, we're very mixed up. But that's why I didn't want Ken to go into Barbie's house. That's why I was happy she rejected him. Because I thought, good, now you have an opportunity to actually live your own life. And build
your own house.
And maybe go build your own house, man. Like, you came out into the real world and you saw the men on the construction site and you were shocked because everything was the opposite here, And he's like, oh, wow, men do things? So if you're impressed by men doing things, go do things. That was what I thought was really, I thought it was a really subtle psychological temptation for all of the women in that theater to then look at Ken at the end of that film and say, oh, we feel so sorry for him. I felt sorry for him, but not for the same reason. You know, it wasn't because he didn't get Barbie. It was just because the women playing with him had said, "You're enough. You don't have to realize any of your dreams that you found in the real world. You don't have to get a men extender
Yeah.
and learn how to ride a horse or learn how to surf so you can be a lifeguard, or it's fine. You can just cry and wear a tie-dye t-shirt." It's horrible. That's the castration of millennial men. Because these women are mothering the boys that are supposed to be grown enough to have their own children. My generation mother their boyfriends and their husbands, like Gloria mothers her husband. It's so disgusting. I've seen it for like forever. And like, if you have a cultural prejudice against this, God help you, because you're a weird Barbie then, because you can see the dynamics about what the Barbies are doing. And the other women don't want to hear it. Why are you mothering your romantic partner? This is gross. Let him be the man. Let him lead. So here's the other problem too, is because the Kens don't realize this. This has all been hyper normalized in Barbieland. Kens aren't leading. Ken didn't lead. He was waiting for Barbie to make a move or to say something, or he was waiting without risking the final heartbreak. You know, he didn't want to take a risk.
Right.
So at the end, it's sort of left for both of them to go off in their own way. It just still, it was quite a poignant depiction of what it is to be a millennial or a zennial. Everybody's sitting around twiddling their thumbs, wondering when things are going to change instead of actually being the ones to change them. Men complaining that women are running everything and then not saying, okay, well, I'll run this, you know? I'm going to run the relationship dynamics. I'm going to be the one that says, hey, Barbie, come to the beach with me tomorrow. It's not girls' night tomorrow, you know? Stop doing it. Just stop. Don't go to the disco. Don't go to the coordinated dances, because you know, he followed her into the real world, and then this is the thing, that kind of two path experience with the narrative of the movie. He followed her and still was thinking everything that he was going to do in Kendom was for her, not for himself. I found that really interesting. So, yeah, it was a dissatisfying ending for Ken. I didn't like it, and it was very typically millennial. The women who made this film have depicted perfectly what has happened to the men of that generation. Perfectly. They don't, you know, even in the symbol of it, the horse, right? The horseshoe. It's magnificently done.
So the young man that I talked to about it said he was unsatisfied with all of the character arcs, and said they all basically end up in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was a kind of, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it. It was like it's a therapeutic solipsism. That in fact all they end up in is feel, which is what, you know, it's like, oh, he gets to have his feels and he cries, and as you say, he cries and then it's okay, right? You felt it. And that what Barbie is given, you know, the sort of great break moment when Ruth is saying, well, you have to make a choice, and she's like, just feel. I mean, one of the things you said last week was, well, she, you know, she has to allow herself to feel. But then when I'm talking to this, he's in his 20s, right? Saying, yeah, that's all it is, right? There's no, as you're saying, no skills, no knowledge, no transformation, but it's just feel. And the therapy is in feeling stuff. And that, now I can't read, there was something else he was saying, how that she's not, in fact, well, I think it's in the things that she feels, it seems to be about growing up. And it's a weird montage that they chose, because I didn't like who it's supposed to apply to and who is actually feeling what. But that women feel, it's all about, yes, just feel yourself as, oh, you can be sorrowful and you can be joyful and happy, but it's mainly, I don't know, it was messy and confused. The irony of all of this, when I was watching New Rock Stars, the one that I said he had the interesting insight about, which part of it was it Eric Voss's, it's interrupted in the YouTube by his giving a infomercial for a therapy app. It's too good, right? You're listening to him analyze this movie, and then you get him for like minutes talking about this therapy app where you can click on and choose your therapist and pick your schedule, and if you don't like that therapist, you can talk to another therapist. And I'm like, whoa, this is it. It is therapy culture. That's it. And then I understood that, oh gosh, I don't get to like the movie so much anymore, because that is where it lands. You're simply in this, oh yes, feel. I wanted you to be able to feel. Being human means feeling. And there's no adulting. there's nothing adult in any of this. Going to the gynecologist, okay, so now you're physical and you have emotions, but the like hard choices stuff is not there.
No. At least I think at least they prepped Barbie for the potential of having a hard choice, because if she's going to the gynecologist, it's sort of like a hint somewhere that there might be a fertility in the future. Which is, at least there's that. But for the Kens, it was just feeling. It was literally like putting Kendom on the level of you can get therapy and work all of this out, wasn't it? Yeah. You don't have to get skills. You don't have to learn how to do things. All your misery and your anger at not having this romantic relationship with this person it's for them to work out. It's not for you to work out. It's not based on your choices. It's all based on her choices. This is the thing that was weird, because we've talked about this in previous streams, why Galadriel in armor was so annoying, as a character. She doesn't have any choice. She doesn't have to make a difficult choice, because female characters never have to make a difficult choice when they're turned into these like feminist superhero pseudo saints. But male characters have to make difficult choices all the time. It's part of their character development. So what happened in this film with Ken was unusual, because he had a great setup to suddenly need to, suddenly needing to make very difficult decisions.
Rescue Barbie,
He had to rescue Barbie. That was his opportunity to show her that he loved her. He should have gone after the black car that just pushed her in, but he let her go. So
and Gloria goes after them. Gloria does go after it.
The mums go after her.
Now that could be so. The depth there is obviously, wishing the millennial women wishing their mothers had stood up for them. Maybe.
Yes.
Possibly. I mean, so we say more is clearly everything that went into this movie is bubbling up and coming out.
Yes.
Nothing's hidden, and all of the frustrations of we wanted to be moms, we wish our moms had been there for us. That's pretty. I mean, yeah, I can definitely see that as a anguish that the movie is expressing.
Well, yeah, definitely. But it's also interesting that it was glossed over that he left her. She doesn't even say anything.
Right. Why didn't you help me? Because she doesn't expect it. She doesn't expect. But that, I mean, in the sort of cartoon version, it's like it does. And I think what you've been saying, it helps to remember these are women playing with the dolls.
Yes.
All of it.
Yes.
It's all women playing with dolls. And so insofar as we learn from the story, it's showing us what not, I mean, it's like what women want is not in the toy version of things. That's the cartoon version of what little girls think being grown up means. I get to be president. I get to be an astronaut. I get to be this. And, you know, and the as a moderately accomplished woman, it takes a lot of work, right? And it's funny seeing the woman, the you are talking to a doctor, right? My mother is a doctor. She's older than I am, guys. So yes, and you know, was one of 10 women in her graduating class from 1964 of medical school. Yes, I get it, right? It's like being doctors and training at that professional level takes a lot of work on all sides for both men and women. But the Barbies don't have to do that, right? They're just dressed as president or Nobel Prize winner, or, you know, like, we get all these things, and but it's like little kids imagining what it would be. I'd like to be a movie star.
Yeah, there's no effort required. There's also no competition, because it's a girl's version of being in the workforce.
Competition.
No one's competing to steal your job. Nobody's insulting you. Everyone loves what you're doing. There's no competition. Nobody else is going to take your job. This is literally girls playing with the dolls. This is the girls playing with the Legos. Feminine version of the workforce.
Nobody's going to try to take
absolutely
your job.
Unrealistic. Yeah, no one's going to try and take your job.
Oh, sorry, that's
yours.
I might like die now.
but it's President Barbie, right. So we've already got President Barbie. We don't need another one.
She's the only one. There's not going to be an election for that. You know, she doesn't have to compete against another woman. And of course, when women do have to compete under those circumstances, they find it hard, I think, to be graceful. Mrs. Clinton.
Yeah.
When they lose. I can think maybe she's not really happy with that. Good game, Mr. Trump. No, I'm pretty sure. No, anyway, so yeah, it's a girl's version of what adult society looks like, and unfortunately, Gloria gives it back to them as like, this is the reality of it, is this toy version of why it's contradictory, rather than it's contradictory because, you know, you're in a multiplicity of other people's choices as well.
Yes.
And your own abilities.
Yes. Yes. And you see the insight into her perception of male competition.
Right.
Because there's a constant competition over what? It's over Barbie. It's never about, I want to be the lifeguard, or I want to be the doctor, or I want to be president. It's like in the little girl's vision of the world, I can be anything, and boys compete. What do? They fight a lot, because this is what you would see as a little girl when you're going to those birthday parties. What do the boys do when they're all hanging out together? Oh, they fight.
Right.
So we have to break up fights, because mommy has to break up fights all the time. But they don't compete for the roles. They're competing for my attention. So it's like, it's a very interesting insight there into how Kens are feminized. The whole dynamic of the Kendom is a feminine, like, female version of what the reality of being a man looks like. Because they can't go into the headspace. She hasn't gone into the headspace of her husband. Right. She's in her own head. Yeah. The Kens are in her head. That's why it wasn't satisfying. And it's why I didn't feel sorry for Ken. Because I could tell, I knew that this was you're mothering him. You're not Ken. This isn't Ken. This is your version of what would be good for this person. You know, he doesn't get his opportunity to, like, strike out on his own and do his own thing. He's just boxed in that tie-dyed jumper that says Kenough. Frustrated me. Really frustrated me. I wanted to see him on a horse, or building something, or, you know, realizing some part of himself. And it wasn't there. He was just told to cry and everything is going to be fine.
Therapy,
yeah. That's the millennial answer to everything. And see, feeding this into this like resentment of millennial men when they realize that actually they've been raised in a culture where it's like, okay, we're going to orbit the women. Because I've seen it. I know the dynamics. Like I grew up with very, very, very liberal culture. I've seen the dynamics of the millennials, the guys that just orbit these like all-powerful female rulers and whatever. And so there's a feeling there that is being tapped into with the film. But it's a massive trap that everyone can tap into that feeling all at once in this kind of group therapy session.
Yeah.
And then say, oh, we have to empathize with Ken, which means, yeah, we're going to feel sorry for him, instead of empathizing with him and saying, no, they did you dirty. You should have gone into the real world. That was my perspective of the Ken arc.
So the other thing that Voss said after he finished with the therapy part was, I thought something very perceptive about the plot structure. And he apparently, so this is the new rock stars guy, and he said he has this theory that all American movies are either Citizen Kane or The Wizard of Oz. And I think I think he has a point about some of the things that he noticed about Barbie. It's The Wizard of Oz, obviously. The pink road that she has to take to go out of Barbieland, right? It's like she's going to go along the pink road and end up. I suppose the skating is kind of like dancing along that road once they get out. It does make sense of things like these were some of the things he said were not. I'm riffing off of his Wizard of Oz insight. For example, that they end up going to Century City, which the whole point about Wizard of Oz is they have to go to, the Emerald City, which, because I know that Frank Baum, when he wrote the story after he visited the Chicago Exposition in 1893, the World's Fair, and I'm not sure whether this is legend or not, but that the World's Fair was known as the White City because, according to the book about it, The Devil in White City, they didn't have time to paint it all in the way that they meant to, because they'd gotten in squabbles about building the whole thing. And so when they put the fair buildings up, they only had time to white paint them. And so they made it like virtue of, oh yeah, we meant it to be white. But I think at the fair, they may have given people like colored glasses to look through. So the whole point in the Wizard of Oz, the Emerald City isn't actually emerald. It's, you have to put the glasses on, to keep you from being blinded by the green. No, the glasses were green so that you thought the city was like all fake. So, Ken when they go to Century City and Ken is seeing the patriarchy, he's actually in Oz, and then the Mattel CEO is the Wizard of Oz. He's the shyster, the trickster, the pretend one in control. I'm telling this to my husband. He says, "Who's the Wicked Witch?" Hold that thought, because Voss didn't suggest a witch, but he did say who the good witch is. And then I'm like, oh right, this is why I really hated that ending with Ruth Handler. She's Glinda. Right. And I'm like, yes, that makes total sense. We come Barbie. All you have to do is, and I thought maybe the shoes with the pink Birkenstocks, her feet are flat. But they're also, yes, you've got your ruby slippers. You can go home now. Click, click, click. And she does go home because she's actually Gloria's Barbie. Right. So that made sense to me, that there's a wish fulfillment of a kind of, okay, then what is Ken in this situation? And Voss was sort of like, well, could be, is he Toto?
Wow.
Where'd my dog go? He finally fell asleep, right? There are ways in which Ken is dog-like, right? He's just, he's a pet.
Yes.
He's the way he did, and I can feel this when I'm taking Drake, little boy dog, you're gonna behave and you're gonna come when I call you, and I'm gonna like give you treats and you can play, and then we must come home and I go to work again, right? So there's a way in which Ken is as you've been saying, infantilized, but there's also a way in which he's a pet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he had the potential. I mean, in Wizard of Oz, right, Dorothy is accompanied by the other three characters who find themselves, which heart, brain, and courage, right?
Yes.
Um, maybe he sort of goes to Oz and comes back with the idea of patriarchy. So unrealized there, because in fact, in the Wizard of Oz, they do get those attributes, and Ken just gets enough.
Mm.
Who's the Wicked Witch?
I don't know.
Well, no, and the thing is, my husband, I'm telling him this, and he's like, "Who's the Wicked Witch?" And I'm like,
know.
"Oh my gosh!" So there is a way in which, like Barbie, when she's running through the cubicles, and they're like the flying monkeys, right? They're flying after her, so she's
Yes.
trying to get away. I mean, I think there's kind of only one option for who's the Wicked Witch.
Mm-hmm. Say.
It's Gloria.
Aha. That makes sense.
I mean, I'm just riffing off of the insight here that I mean, they're definitely American. So one, that all stories are always constantly retelling other stories. That's just feature of storytelling, that we are always finding meaning in the stories that we make. So I'm not actually faulting Barbie or Gerwig as a writer for playing off of other stories. I mean, we're doing it in Drake Alchemicus. You're always doing it.
Yes.
You're overlaying. I mean, and there's only two stories anyway, right? You go on a journey, stranger comes to town, or whatever. There were ways that one of the things I thought we were going to do in this episode was talk about the way Gerwig went to a Catholic girls' school growing up, and we'd say how much of what she's playing off of in all of this has to do with going to a Catholic girls' school. She has said in one of her interviews, and she apparently gave a poem to the cast that was modeled on the Apostles' Creed. There is something of a, you're in, I don't know whether Barbieland is meant to be Eden. I mean, there's a kind of sexless happiness of the story, and that the fall comes when she has to go through mortality and think about choices and such. I rewatching it, I was like, I'm hard pressed to find the Christian structure in this, because I'm always looking for it, and maybe it's there.
Well, if it is based on the Wizard of Oz, that would explain it, because Frank L. Baum was a theosophist.
Ooh, let's go there.
Yeah.
So there's confusion,
So,
right? It's not going to play out with the proper Christian structure,
yes.
because, well,
they don't have a concept of logos in a Catholic sense.
Say more.
The word becomes so.
Got Kid holding his box right now. Let's get him out of the box. We're in the Theosophy box.
So the Theosophical Ken.
Theosophical Ken.
So, Theosophy is, it's occultic, and it's all about the ascension and gaining the enlightenment, and gaining the hidden knowledge of all of these religions, which has this, allegedly, this ancient superstructure which reveals the real truth, or the real wisdom of the ages, right?
This makes a lot of sense.
So
we got standing outside.
Oh my
gosh! Super chat. Standing outside says, "You ladies have sold me on seeing this movie. Never would have considered it." Ah, yes, but now we have comes with warning.
Yeah.
Okay. Theosophy may be the warning, because
So,
we did watch. Brother Augustine released a video this afternoon insisting that it's a Christian movie, but he mainly means it's showing all of the disruption and sin in modernity. So okay.
Oh
fine.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, for the Theosophists, they have their concept of godhood, which is more aligned with the Hinduist kind of conception of things, in the sense of God has these impersonal, but has emanations. The emanations of the deity are either closer or further away from Godhead, and then you get the manifestations of this deity, and these various emanations are things like the incarnations, and all the thousands and thousands of gods and goddesses, and all of this madness. But there is no Trinity. So there is no God Logos becomes flesh and dwells amongst us. So here's an interesting thing now. This is really, really fascinating, because if Gerwig has come with this attempt to create this story based on the Wizard of Oz and then meld it with the dynamics of a Catholic education, we have two completely incompatible frames for a narrative.
Yes.
Because the Theosophists are getting an internal enlightenment, whereas for Catholics, we get the grace. We get the revelatory God who gives us him as enlightenment. Right. Now, this explains why the movie would be confused. Because Dorothy can't click her heels and then go home in our understanding. And this would explain why Ken has a catharsis instead of realizing his manhood. He's not made in the image of anybody. Only Barbie is. Because Barbie's been made in Ruth's imaginative picture of perfection. Right. This is why I made you. You know, they're having this woman-to-woman discussion, but it's like creator and created. It's like, I made you to be everything. I made you to be perfect. Ken has no maker in that sense. He's not the image of anything. So they can't work him out. Now that explains a lot. She has to have a theosophical realization at the end of that if they're anchoring it in Wizard of Oz.
Well, it certainly follows that that's what, you know, so Handler shows up in the movie in the same way Glinda does. And Glinda shows up in the middle of the movie to point her to, you know, in the right direction, right? You can run away that way. And then she shows up at the end, somehow having gotten to Barbieland with the rest of everybody, and does the sort of mystical feel thing. And then Barbie finds herself, we don't know, right? There's a transition out of mist. That is what we know. When Glinda comes back to Dorothy and says, you know, you could have gone home all along, and all you needed, you know, you always had, you needed to want it, right? I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home, and now you can go home. So you have to want it. And yes, obviously, other people have pointed out the obvious things like 2001 and The Matrix, but Voss is the only one that I saw that said, okay, but there's the Wizard of Oz structure there, and that to me makes a deeper sense. I mean, certainly Wizard of Oz is a very Midwest story since it's focused on Chicago in structure, but it is also a very Hollywood fantasy version of things, right? We're going to go to the city, find the magic. Oh no, we don't need to go to the city and find the magic because the magic's actually already in me, in us. I can go home now.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Theosophy.
Huh. I didn't know that about Baum. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Which is the easy fix, you know. That's the solution. It's in us, you know. There's this the interpretation of the divinity that is completely not Christian. If it's already there all along in Barbie, well, of course it's going to be an unsatisfying end for Ken, because this isn't how it works. That isn't actually the logos of growing into adulthood at all. We're to be trained as Christians. We don't just want therapy and self-realization. We need training and grace. They boxed Ken.
We're going to have to find a romance that actually is Christian to talk through.
Yes.
Which is challenging because as we just pointed out, it's like Wizard of Oz is not a Christian story if it's theosophical. I'd say I think the pictures are going to, Ruth Handler had in fact a fairly romantic life story herself, but she wasn't Christian either.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when Brother Augustine finished his, he imagined her, reading Paul about, she might have said, when I was a child, I thought as a child and I grew up. And I'm like, well, she wouldn't have been reading that because she met her husband at a B'nai B'rith dance. I think they were Jewish. So, and they cast Perlman as Ruth Handler, and Perlman's Jewish,
Yes.
although was married to Danny DeVito, who's Catholic. I think my guess is that there's a lot of conflicting stories playing out in all of this, which is also interesting to consider. It's like we've sort of touched occasionally on these layers of mythology, but I'm thinking maybe we're gonna have to do it a little more deeply. What is a Christian story? Because I think sometimes people are assuming it's one thing, maybe it's a different thing, and it doesn't have the structure that they expect. And if all of the stories that we've been living with in our movies, if The Wizard of Oz is theosophical, and that's a sort of character arc that Americans have been dreaming through my mom's entire lifetime, we need to see what those actual story structures are and why they are not what we mean when we say you've been baptized and transformed and brought before the throne as a Christian.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm convinced this is not a Christian movie.
There was no transformation for Ken.
Right.
There was no transformation for Barbie. It was just feeling.
Right.
There was no actual transformation for either of them.
Do you think
it wasn't about how they related to other people? It was about how they related to themselves.
Right. That's the therapeutic.
Still looking at themselves.
Solipsism.
Yeah.
That the movie is showing.
What were you going to say?
Was there anything? So the thing that I did like, and it's like you've been listening. You said you were roller skating to the soundtrack. In the song that the Kens have, where and the thing is, I caught a hint. Oh, so here on screen right now is Ruth Handler with one of her other very famous dolls, which were baby dolls. So Chatty Cathy or something. That Mattel did make baby dolls still, even though they were making Barbies. So just so you know, that there was something Gosling or somebody said that the Ken song was kind of maybe a joke. It wasn't meant to be actual like central feature of anything, and they made it as a trailer kind of. I don't know, maybe that's not true, but there was the guys who were responding to all of this and saying, yes, we're back, it's great, the patriarchy, whatever that means, which doesn't exist, because as we've said, patriarchy is feminism imagined, is a childish construct, and it's not what men have to do to actually be adults. Is there anything left in that song for us? No.
I like it because it's fun, but it's still it's toy boys complaining and singing. It's toy boys. It's like you put it on and you're listening to toy boys. That's what it is. They're stuck in playtime instead of man time.
So it's all Winnie the Pooh is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's like this, like she won't look at me and blah, 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 blah. It's just this kind of thing. Okay. But again, no self-reflection on his part in the sense of like the roles between the Barbies and the Kens in Barbieland, and exactly why the dynamics are set up the way they're set up. That it is the Mattel people that have set up those dynamics. And just taking out the aggression on the Barbies and sort of like having a whinge, which is fine, but at the same time, there's no moment where he decides to behave any different. It's all emotional catharsis in the Ken song. He doesn't come to an epiphany where he makes a choice and changes anything. He's not in control of the narrative of this film. despite claiming to want to be in patriarchy and to be
Right.
in control of things, he actually makes no decision whatsoever except for setting up frat house circumstances with the other Kens. But there is no responsibility and there's no genuine risk. There's no demand for difficult decision making. None of it. Nothing that would allow them to function in the real world situations. So yeah, the song is I think music therapy for millennial boys. Yeah.
Now I'm sweating. Where's the Ken with the handkerchief in case
I sound harsh, but you know, it's like that's my perception as a millennial, zennial, whatever. And I've seen the dynamics since I was very, very young, and I see this orbit and I don't like it. Because the thing that people have said so many times in the last couple of years on the internet is that women don't have agency, men have agency. This film does not depict men with agency. None of them have agency. None of the Kens demonstrate agency. And when Ken has his epiphany, he goes back into
not having agency.
It's so dissatisfying. They did him dirty. Yeah, they really did. So don't take him as the prototype, because it's not. This is not the solution for our culture. Western, whatever it is.
The Kendom Saloon.
The Kendom Saloon is, yeah. He took her house to make that saloon. You see? He took from her to make his thing. He never built anything for himself.
We're really in trouble.
Yeah. He took her house and redecorated it and claimed that he'd created something. If you like go in savage with a knife, take away all the emotion of him not getting the kiss he wants, what it actually looks like is bitterness and an inability to actually set up anything that he wants, and an inability to be honest with Barbie about his feelings for her. It's not nice.
Well, I'm pretty sure Gosling was saying the words Gerwig wrote for him, so she wrote this. Yeah. Or she and her not husband wrote this.
So it's a grand insight into the millennial woman's mentality.
Ooh, cautionary tale.
Yeah.
But no way out.
No, they didn't give anybody a way out.
We're going to have to talk about some different movies. See if we can find any way out in the stories. Now, I do have the problem that because we're in the Anglo world and it's Protestants, there are so few actual Catholic stories. I guess we should have to write some. I want to be the meaning maker, not the one about me. No, we need to write some stories that actually participate in the Christian story structures in a robust way.
Yes. Yeah.
Good thing we're doing
definitely.
That. But I hope, the thing is, I hope from our perspective, and this is a challenge for us now that we're basically an all-women writing team now with Draco Alchemicus, can we write it in a way that actually does what we see isn't being done in Barbie? Because Barbie it's a Gerwig's realization of her desire to be the one behind the camera and directing everything and creating the story, and so she's put herself in this as, I want this as my outcome. But I think it's like, it's a bit, does she gives Barbie this, like, Barbie wants to live in the real world, which tends to suggest women actually do want to live in the real world. We don't want to just be living in the toy world where the men aren't men. but then that last scene with the Ferrara's actual real life husband pretending not to be able to speak Spanish. I don't know.
But that is a very American West thing. It's like in terms of cinema, in terms of the films that come out of Hollywood, the men are always as being bumbling idiots, really. I mean, this we did this when we did the Hays Code Hustle, when you started your magnificent binge, and then we realized all of even the 1960s depictions of the boys. Hollywood had created this idiotic stereotype of men.
Right.
This has been going on for a long time.
It has. And the saloon, the
It's been
saloon thing is interesting because it's like it's only in westerns allegedly that we have masculine characters.
Yeah.
Or do we? The horse part.
Well, no, I don't. I mean, I don't think that there are, but I can't think of any examples now. It's an interesting thing that the depiction of masculinity also wasn't in a relation to. It wasn't masculine in relation to like the relationships that Ken has. It was just like what he has, the fridge and the horse pendants and the headband and the coat. It was all like a very commodity driven thing of,
right.
If I buy these things or I own these things, then I will be man. Had nothing to do with who he was.
I am Kenough.
I am Kenough. Yeah. So it's a complicated thing now. I don't know. It's really hard to make comments on these kinds of stories because every time you make a comment either way on the dynamics of these two characters, you fall into there's like pits everywhere, and it's like either, oh, you hate the Barbies? No. Oh, you hate the Kens then? No. It's just that if you can see this as a setup of like, this is the hellscape that the millennials have inherited, makes more sense. But the solution isn't given in this movie.
Right. That's definitely true. I'm trying to wait for the pictures to cycle back around to when they had the puppies. Let me see if I could find them. There's Barbie and the Trojan horse. There's boys after barely passing the exam. There's one of the Kens was this He-Man character guy. He gets to play the merman or the
yeah.
Let's see. The Barbie movie is going to be the hot people's Joker, which I'm thinking we're establishing that may not be the case. Steal his look. Barbie and Ken faking their relationship since 1961. Yes, as we said, Ken was her brother in real life. When you're Kenough, no. Weird Barbie. Alan. When your man dresses himself. The saloon. Mojo Dojo Casa House. I mean, this one, same. So there have been some younger men on the social media saying Barbie movie tries to subvert expectations by talking about feminism and women's empowerment. The men have the most memorable moments and best jokes. Ryan Gosling even has the best song. Yeah, I'm thinking the patriarchy is back, bros. But it's not, and we didn't want the patriarchy anyway because is Barbie home as the hamster because Gosling wore a hamster costume once. That was hilarious. The Wes Anderson movie. There, the puppies. Where did there the puppies are. I'm gonna have to hold still on this. It was in this was one of these little like promotional tour scenes, and they're really Robbie and Gosling are sitting there on this floor, and they've got puppies frolicking about them, and she's basically ignoring the dogs for the most part, and he turns into dad mode briefly because the dogs they're puppies, they're like 8 weeks old, and they start wrestling with each other. I'll go back to the puppies. Let's go back to the puppies. Some of them start wrestling with each other, and he's like, "Oh, he's got to stop." He's kind of like trying to calm things down and stuff. There's got to be actual masculine responsibility taking somewhere hiding in all of these men.
You mean hiding in the film,
No,
or just in the
real
men
life.
in general? Well, it's a choice.
I refuse to believe that Gosling isn't somewhat conscious of this problem, because he seems to be conscious of it in this GQ thing, where he's talking to the objects that Ken has to have, and I think that's a running thing that GQ does, right? So and so's accessories. But so it's not just Ken doing it, but there is this sense of, you know, he's able to say why Ken needs these things to be supportive of Barbie at all times. Men, please. It's nice to be attentive to your women, but don't fall in the trap. Anyway, we've run out of time, and I think we've said as much as we have to say now. Anything else? I'm not sure I want to talk about Barbie again. So we better wrap it up now.
No, it was mostly a reflection on the Florence Nightingale comment in light of the dynamics of this film, because Nightingale is in a nursing capacity.
Right.
And I think that this is very maternal. And if you're in this kind of relationship with men only, and you're not being taken care of yourself, you start to see the world through that lens of being the nurse, being the mother figure. This is, I think, the kind of challenge for the generation now, is that if you don't like the dynamics that you're living in, you have to change them. What has happened is everyone has normalized Barbies being maternal with the Kens. And it's going to be very uncomfortable for both sexes to change that dynamic. It's going to look brutal. Because we've got a generation of men that have grown up being mothered by grown women that should be their wives. And we've got a generation of women that have grown up to mother the men that should be their husbands.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And underline that the different ways in which women, I mean, every you know, drama about women that actually appeals to us, and it's like, you know, Jane Austen is as much about the women being difficult with each other as anything else. That you know, the women that Simone de Beauvoir, ladies, please don't take her as your model, did not have good relationships with other women. She handed them off to Sartre, or he stole them from her for sexual activity. That women, we actually also need better stories about how to behave as women.
Yes.
And this one isn't really giving it to us.
No.
And ones that are, you know, honest about the kinds of competition we do get in with each other, rather than candy-covered pretense that we don't have it.
Yes.
Okay.
There are going to be difficult stories to write.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're not writing it at this level in Draco Alchemicus. We're doing more societal spell casting. I guess we'll have more stories to go after this one. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, Ken has his microphone, and we've taken him through the trauma, and we're done therapy on Barbie.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. Sign up for our newsletter. We have more new books coming out, and we'll be telling you about those in the newsletter. And please give us your comments. Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.